Hello, I'm Senator Roxanne J. Persaud, representing the 19th Senate District. And as usual, we have a conversation where we bring topics of all natures to the constituents of the 19th Senate District and beyond. Today, we have a conversation with Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez of the Department of Transportation. That's the State Department of Transportation. And our topic today, it's on human trafficking. Human trafficking, as you know, it's something that has grown and continues to be a parasite in communities such as mine. So before we get into that, Commissioner, I'd like you to introduce yourself, tell us what the DOT does, and then we'll start our conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for the invitation to join you, Senator. So I serve as Commissioner of the New York State Department of Transportation. We are about an 8,500 person organization. We're responsible for the safe, reliable, efficient, equitable, and sustainable movement of people and goods across the state of New York. We do that for roads, bridges. We have jurisdiction over roads, bridges, transit, rail, ports,
Some of the
aviation.
crazy things that I call you and fuss about, be like, oh, when is this project going to be done? Yes.
There's really not a part of transportation that we don't touch.
Okay. So how does human trafficking touch your agency when we're having these conversations?
I think really what's transpired over the last I would say decade is we're finding more and more human traffickers, those that are actually trafficking individuals, moving in the transportation system across the networks, whether it be through public transit, on the roadways, etc. And what we've been doing is partnering across the board with a number of organizations to make sure that one, there's awareness within our own workforce because we have a lot of eyes on the roadway. As you can imagine, we have motor carrier inspectors and others. So our employees are educated about human trafficking, but more importantly, collaborating with a number of other organizations to make sure that there's awareness across the board on what to look for, because this is a silent, uh, I'll say a silent organization that's working, right? People are very hesitant for obvious reasons. Their life is often at risk to say anything. And so it's a matter of observation. A lot of the human traffickers that we're identifying, you actually have to observe it and call someone, notify
Mhm.
someone. I think I'm seeing someone who's being trafficked and let the authorities know. So working with our state partners in at the state police, at the Thruway Authority, and certainly DCJS and others, but then also working across the board with organizations like Truckers Against Trafficking, otherwise known as TAT,
Mhm.
um, to really raise awareness across the board within the transportation network, the industry, but more importantly, amongst Americans.
You brought up TAT. We're going to be hosting them on Wednesday here in Albany, where they're going to be showing you, what the display of what, trafficking is about and all of that. And so what we've done is, we're encouraging all the legislators to just to go and review it so that they can take information back to their constituents. We're also encouraging the schools in the area to bring their students out
Oh, that'll
so
be
that they
great.
can understand, what when we're talking about human trafficking, what it means. Because we're seeing younger and younger kids who are being trafficked. And coincidentally, this morning on the news, there was a report of a number of people who were found dead in a trailer. And they're suspecting trafficking. It's not New York, thank goodness. But they're reviewing that to find out exactly what happened. But those are some of the things that we're seeing, you know. So the governor signed the legislation that I had that includes DOT in the, in the as part of the task force. What does that mean for your agency?
Well, I think it's really important across the board. So I first and foremost appreciate your advocacy, and I appreciate the governor has been extremely focused across the board on domestic violence issues, particularly against women, um, but also this area of human trafficking because like I said, it's one of these silent crimes, if you will. And so the fact that the task force has been extended to include transportation entities, I think is very important. Um, you had all the I'll say the core state agencies that have been involved in the human trafficking task force. They're doing great work. Greatly appreciate your advocacy on all of that. And now with the expansion of the task force to include the transportation entities, DMV, DOT, Thruway,
Yep.
etc., it makes a big difference. When you look at all of the modes of transportation, one of the things that we see, one of the areas that we see the most trafficking occurring in is, like I said, our transit systems as well as on the road, right? Um, Truck stops, rest areas, places where there's a lot of people moving about
Mhm.
almost anonymously, right? You get to a rest stop, you move through, you're there for a purpose, and you come back out. And people really don't get a sense of what's really going on. And when you stop and you really start to observe what's going on around you, if you see something that relates to any of the indicators of human trafficking, there's materials now that we're putting in all of our rest areas. We're sharing more broadly across so that there's greater awareness, because that education of, your average New Yorker, making sure that people understand the signs of human trafficking, we have to get that out in as many areas as possible. So I think expanding that on the education side is really important. We're doing the same for all of our employees. So at DOT, we have an entire group of people, our motor carrier inspectors, that are responsible for inspecting the safe operation of trucks that move on our transportation network
Mhm.
across the system, as well as transit operators, as well as buses. And that's an opportunity for our employees to see if they see the signs of trafficking, to report that as well. Work with our partners at state police, because oftentimes we're doing a co-location of inspections with
Mhm.
our partners at state police. If we see any of those signs of trafficking, we're reporting them. It's a greater visibility by including transportation in the task force to really expand that base.
It's great that you're talking about the education component. Last year, I think it's to the latter end of last year, there was this report, a news report, that looked at the education when it comes to human trafficking. And as you know, it's required that all, hotels, etc., must put the information up in their restrooms, in their, in their hotel rooms and all that. And the report showed that across the tri-state, many of these hotels were not doing that. And so when they were speaking with the managers of these hotels, some of them were like, "Well, we didn't know this is a law." And this was not just New York. New York, we were pretty okay, but we had a lot of them not. But across, the tri-state, many people did not know that these things the signage must be visible so that anyone coming in and they need assistance, they know where to call. And so, the reporters are going to be going back to check in on that. But, I'm happy that your inspectors are looking at that when they go out. Last a few weeks ago, the time is just running by us. We hosted in my district a conversation about trafficking, because we have what's called a pen track. It's on a national level. Everybody's talking about a pen track. The federal government currently has a huge case against some traffickers there, and we had FBI, NYPD, um, uh, OCFS, OTDA, all some of the social service agencies, all of them coming in having this conversation, because what you need to know, what is it that we really have to do to eliminate the scourge of human trafficking in areas, and that's one of those areas that no matter what they've done, they had cameras there for a while and signage, and we saw a decrease in the trafficking because people knew that all eyes were on them. But for some reason, the cameras were removed, and lo and behold, they're back. It's also a business district where you have those large trucks parked, and that's where the activity is going. overnight. And so we're trying to find solutions to ending trafficking in all neighborhoods. But sometimes, it's really difficult. But it takes a coordinated effort,
It
everyone coming
does.
together.
It
And
does
so,
indeed.
and also, I want to say thank you to your team because they're going to be with us when we have the display on here in Albany. They're like, oh, we'll be there, we'll be there. So we'll wait to see what they're going to be doing. And your team has sent us information that we've been sharing across our community
Great.
about trafficking. So I appreciate that.
We're
Um,
excited to join you this week because I think it'll be a
yeah,
great display, but it's another opportunity, as you said, for education across the board. And everybody's got a piece of it. It's not just one
it's not just
agency,
one.
it's each of us, literally, as individual New Yorkers.
Yeah. So if you're telling people when your team goes out, what are some of the things that they look for, as a sign of trafficking? People often wonder, like, how do you know there's trafficking? We had a situation where constituents were calling because they saw activity in one of these trailers, and it was during the height of the migrant crisis in New York City. And it turned out to be, it really was. It was all the young, very young girls that were housed in this trailer. And, so we had, city agencies and police and everybody, they took care of that. But what are some of the things that your people look for when that they observe as to, before they let the state troopers know?
It's a variety of things, right? There's oftentimes uh, you'll have people that are often dominant. So the trafficker,
Hmm.
not allowing the individual or individuals that are with him or her to speak, right? If somebody's asking a question, they'll shut them down. Um, if there's a group of people and they're clearly being moved in a certain direction as a group,
Hmm.
you want to make sure there's a very distinct characteristic between a tour operation and um and somebody who clearly looks like they're oftentimes they're quiet, to be quite honest.
Hmm.
The silence and the lack of communication is one of the clear indicators of, kind of like perks your ears up to say, what's going on here? Why is there a group that's moving? And usually, when you get off at a rest stop or you want to,
Not everyone wants to do
enjoy,
the same thing.
they don't all want to do the same thing. It's a chance to get out of the car, out of the vehicle, out of the truck, and actually move, right?
Hmm.
Because you've been sitting in a car for a little while. When you see a more subdued response to that, and you're moving, and a group or a few individuals are moving, um, keep your ears open and your eyes open to look for what are some of those characteristics that people might interpret as trafficking. And there's also some symbols and things like that that people oftentimes, we put up all the information both on billboards at traffic
Hmm.
at our rest
Yes.
areas, but also in the bathroom area, because oftentimes that's the only place where individuals can read it for themselves and know that there's a hotline number, that there's a way to actually contact somebody, QR codes and the like, so that if you are being trafficked, who do I call? How do I report this myself? And giving the individual tools as well.
It's interesting you talked about that because someone years ago in law enforcement said to me, the average person doesn't buy a Sprinter van. And I'm like, huh? They're like, always look to see
A Sprinter
a
van.
Sprinter van. I was like, interesting.
Sprinter vans are mostly used to move people, groups of people in
Yeah.
transportation, right?
And they said we have
Um,
to, when you're seeing that, just watch to see what is really being done. And didn't understand that. I was like, you see Sprinter vans all the time.
they're really a mode of transportation for groups of people, right? Or to move commodities for businesses. So that's a good tip.
Yeah, it's interesting, what you see. And when you talked about, someone controlling another person. A few years ago, a staff member and I were out very early in the morning. We were going to, we had a meeting, had to stop by, and it was in winter. And so I parked, and we're sitting there, and we saw these two young girls, you know, scantily dressed and walking. And so as they approached my car, they went to pass. I walked down the window and I said to them, yes, ladies, if you need help, I always tell this story. I said, if you need help, we can help you. One of the girls stopped, or she was a younger one. The older one continued walk, and then when she realized the young one stopped, she came back and she says, we will never need your help. This real aggressive tone. I said, come on, let's go. Right? And so then my staff said, she's like, Senator, there's somebody across the street in a car. I looked over and was like, there was a man in the car. We're like, oh my God, like, let's get out of here. Because then you don't know, he
Yeah.
sees me talking to, he was there who was controlling him. But you saw that the older girl was the one controlling the younger girl.
Yes.
And you could tell the younger girl wasn't comfortable in what she was doing. And that was her opportunity when she lost it.
It's amazing that you
Because,
witnessed it
yeah.
firsthand.
And we're like, oh my God. And so, I reached out to the NYPD and said, listen, you have to do something in that area. And so, they've been doing it. But it's unbelievable the things that you're seeing. And more younger people. And
Yes.
we tend to think of trafficking as affecting only girls. But it's not.
No, it's not. It's men as well.
It's men as well. Can you talk, when your team, when they're talking with partners, what are some of the things, and who is your best partner in this situation when you're talking about, trafficking?
Well, I want to highlight something because one of the characteristics that you just described is actually something to be on the lookout for. So oftentimes, we talked about some of the other elements of trafficking and what to look for, but one of them is, are individuals appropriately dressed? Are they dressed
Mm-hmm.
for the weather?
Weather. Mm-hmm.
Because you just said the person that you observed was scantily
Scantily dressed.
dressed.
And it was cold.
And if it's in the dead of winter, you really have to, and they're moving in transportation, you really have to, it's one of those signs. Are you dressed for the weather? Are you actually looking like is that individual looking like they're in the place that they should be given the clothing that they're wearing? Um, so in answer to your question, one of the things that I think is the most important in all of this work is the level of collaboration and cooperation with all of the entities that are involved. We've got a lot of organizations, nonprofit as well as state and federal partners. So on one of our best partners is TAT, the Truckers Against Trafficking. Um, they are great partners in this sense that one, the level of education and the materials and the opportunities that they're creating to collaborate with state DOT, state police, OCSF, all of the partners coming together is really important. But they also bring together, and as part of this larger, I'll say, coalition of entities that are working against trafficking, um, the prosecutors,
We
right?
actually had the DA's office with us. Yeah.
Correct. And so what you wanna do is make sure that it goes full cycle. So one, you're educating, and training all of the workforce, right? All of our workforce, anybody that and like I said, New Yorkers writ large about the indications of human trafficking. Then you've got reporting. Then hopefully, if someone is actually caught, we wanna make sure that they're prosecuted. And so that's why the law enforcement as well as the, DAs and the AG have such an important role in all of this because it sends a message to the human trafficking community. If you're caught, we're going to go after you with the full force of the law behind us. That level of enforcement is critical. And diminish the opportunity for more trafficking to take place.
You know, Thanks for that answer. I, for some reason, several years ago, when I really started taking an interest in human trafficking, it's because I had gone to a conference and they were talking about human trafficking across the country, and they were like, "Oh, these, where the oil rigs are going, it's trafficking there, and communities are sparsely populated, that's where you find out." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" We thought we see people walking, we're like, never thought of it as human trafficking because they're like, oh, okay. And then they were talking about places like Alaska and all of these places where human trafficking is like really, really something that they haven't controlled. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I came back to the city and we were talking, and I'm like, I went to this conference and people were talking about human trafficking. And then somebody's like, this woman said, "Oh, my niece was trafficked."
Mm.
And I'm like, What do you mean your niece was trafficked?" And then she said, "Yeah, right there from the community, from her household. The person that was living in their house actually groomed the young girl, and started trafficking her.
Oh my God.
And no one knew until she just disappeared one day. And someone called and said they saw her somewhere. And so they went to find her. So trafficking is not just you see someone on the street. Trafficking it could be in someone's home. You know, do you have those conversations? Is there material that you have out there letting people know that trafficking is not just seeing someone at a rest stop or a hotel, but it can be also in the whole household?
For us, we focus on the transportation element, but you're absolutely right. It's a whole nother element. I mean, sad to say, this is like something that's been around since the beginning of, I would say
Of time?
time and human existence, unfortunately, because where you see large populations of people, and even in areas where, in more rural areas, the bottom line is that people are, you know, they're looking for opportunities to exploit people to make money.
Hmm.
And that's what this is.
And they're making a lot of money.
And it's pure exploitation,
Yeah.
pure exploitation. And so, you know, that's why the awareness factor is so important because we've seen it all at all levels of our society, right? Low income, high income, it's all the same. We call it human trafficking, but it's literally exploitation
Exploitation. Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah. And it's something that we have to put a stop to. Um, so we have, is there any kind of education that you can share with all the legislators so that they can share the information with their community? I know I'm always reaching out to your team saying, listen, I want to do this. Can you help me do this? Can you create a flyer for me? These kinds of things. But is there something standard that you can share with legislators that they can share, that we can share with our constituents?
We're happy to. We've got some materials that we'd be happy to provide to all of the offices. In fact, we've got a stack of them here that we're going to be dropping off in a number of offices this morning here in the Legislative Office Building. We will certainly encourage everybody to come on Wednesday and
Yeah,
join you. I
I've
think
done
it's
that.
going
Yeah.
to be a really important opportunity to get the word out, but also have a chance to talk to people that are involved in this work and raise awareness. We've also done a number of coalitions work. We've done coalition work through TAT. We did a Brooklyn Coalition build. We brought in people. I believe you in your office participated in all of that to make sure that there's awareness for law enforcement, but also for everyone involved to make sure that the level of education is expanded. And we've also done one here in Albany, really building out that level of coalition. So the bottom line is we need to do this in communities all across the state of New York. Because as you said, it's in communities like yours, very densely populated, as well as rural
Rural
communities.
communities.
And getting that word out, everything that we can do, world, as the legislation that was signed by the governor enforces and that you sponsored, it's that level of education that needs to take place. So you have our commitment that we'll continue to do that. The governor does as well, but now we've got more additional agencies to help do all of that.
Yeah,
It's a
which is
good
a great
good
thing.
step forward
Yeah, because the intent is that we eliminate human trafficking
across the board.
across the board.
Yeah.
Um, you know, some people may think it's just, that's the life someone wants to live. But I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I'm gonna walk naked in the streets
No.
of the city of New York and try to make some money. I don't think that happens. And we have to also, when we're talking about it, we have to make sure we have drug education because
Yes.
also people tend to be pulled into that because of substance abuse and all of these kinds of things. And so it's just a one
It's not
answer.
one
Yeah.
solution. Yeah.
And so we have to make sure that we're looking, and hence all of these agencies that are working together to ensure that we eliminate trafficking in our communities. So, Commissioner, is there anything else you want to tell the constituents about trafficking, about your agencies, how they can work with your agencies? We want the clergy to know that they have access to your agency, to have, to get materials from you. Go ahead.
So we have a number of materials are all on our website, dot.ny.gov. Please take advantage of them. Again, there's opportunity for people who are interested in learning more about human trafficking to participate in the work of the task force, and to become educated themselves and increase awareness across the board. So again, our thanks to everybody involved, certainly your leadership, Senator, to bring all of this together. But it's really the partnership with nonprofits, with law enforcement, and everybody that's got to help raise awareness across the board. It's not going to stop so long as as there's a market
It's a
for it.
market.
And so part of that is making sure that that's why the prosecution piece of all of this is so important.
Well, thank you very much for being here today. And we want everyone to understand human trafficking affects us all. We may not think of it as affecting us. We may not really believe what we're seeing. Sometimes we see things and we discount it, or we dismiss it like, oh no, that's just. But we were seeing younger and younger people being trafficked. We're seeing people who are runaways. They're coming to the cities, they're coming to our state, and then they're being exploited. And so our job is to ensure that we eliminate human trafficking across the board. So, Commissioner, I really thank you for coming here today, having this conversation with us, and I'm looking forward to us having the display on Wednesday and your office's participation. So,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And to everyone watching, I'm Senator Roxanne Persaud saying, have a great day. And this has been Conversation with Senator Persaud. Take care. See you around the community. Bye bye.